I'm very proud of this new creation. It has so many uses. I love the shawl collar on it. The body of the shawl is very dense, and then I added a ruffle that is a little more airy and playful. And this has 4 ways that it can be worn. This is a great little piece called a Sontag, S-O-N-T-A-G. It is a body style from the Victorian era. You might have seen it on Outlander. The beauty part about it is that your hands are free and you can still work, but you're nice and warm.
This piece can also be worn as a shawl.
It's beautiful. It's very, very large. It's about almost 65 inches, maybe a little over now that I have the ruffle on it. But it's a great scarf also. I mean, just draped over a plain little shirt to go anywhere. It'll be, you know, it'll be an attention getter for sure. And so wearing it asymmetrical with just over one shoulder is a nice look. Another thing, it can be a scarf. So you just pull more of it over, like, you know, half it in two. And with a jacket, if you like to have like a cowl look, you can put it on as an ascot or a cowl, and then put your jacket on top of it. Yeah, I can see that. And then your lace would show. This would be a cute little cowl like that. But as a scarf, you still have your layers there in the back, and then tie it and finesse your ties a little bit and your everything, and it is really a gorgeous. And you can still have it over the shoulders or not. You can pull it up. But it's a great little addition to my wardrobe, I know, because I have a lot of use just for a shawl all year long. And so this will be my warm go-to shawl. I can see me wearing it just like this, folded in half, like but over my shoulders, just like this, and hanging down. And it'll really be a nice addition to my wardrobe. And with a plain little dress to go to the symphony, theater, they're always cold. And then, of course, to church, it's always cold.
It easily converts to a shrug by buttoning the buttons that are sewn on the inside of the shawl. As a shrug, it forms a small peplum in the back. It becomes a shawl by opening it up and unbuttoning it. Here I have chosen to reveal my buttons since I use decorative buttons, but that is a personal choice. The shawl, shrug, Sontag, scarf, it can be draped over the body in any way, and it looks stunning and stylish. I am very pleased with how it turned out.
I really like this. So let's get started. Let's learn how to make this. It's really easy.
To complete it, I used approximately 28 ounces of a worsted 4-weight yarn. You will also need the appropriate sized hook, a yarn needle, some stitch markers, and scissors. You're going to be amazed how quickly this project works up. You'll be able to do this perhaps in a day, but certainly in a weekend. For the final stage of the making of this project, you will need 6 7/8 or 1-inch buttons. This is an easy beginner project. You will only use 3 stitches, a slip knot, a slip stitch, chains, and a double crochet. Like everything in crochet, begin with a slip knot on your hook. And in this
chain and all of the chains in this entire project, be sure to chain loosely. They don't need to be bigger than your crochet hook. Just make sure they're not tight. And chain 3. That's 1, 2, and 3. Yarn over and double crochet back into that very first chain. Now make sure on that first chain that you are in the 2 loops, and then that back bump is underneath your hook. When you're in the 2 loops like that, the stitch will not open up and make a big hole. So double crochet and do that again. Double crochet right back into that very first chain. Again, make sure you're under the 2 loops. So let's look at our work. We have 3 stitches. Counting this chain up does count as a double crochet. You have 3 double crochets in the first chain. Now you will chain up 2, and that counts as a double crochet. Yarn over and turn your work. In this very first stitch, place another double crochet. That's called an increase. And then double crochet in the top of the next stitch from the previous row, and double crochet in the next stitch, which is the top of that chain. And so you can see that's why we don't want those tight, because we have to go back in every single chain in this pattern. You will be going into the top of. Okay, now let's look at our work again. We had 3 stitches in the first row. In the second row we have 4 stitches. We have increased. We will increase for the remainder of half of this project, the first 55 rows, but we're only going to increase on this side. So it might be helpful to place a stitch marker here just to remind you that you're only going to increase on that side, and you're going to increase every row. But notice from row 1 to row 2, we only increased 1 stitch. Let's continue. Chain 2, and that counts as a double crochet. And that chain up that counts as a double crochet is this first stitch. So into the next stitch, double crochet, and double crochet in the top of every stitch from that previous row, including that chain. And here is where we are going to do our increase. Place 2 more double crochet in that same stitch from the previous row. So let's look at our work. In this row we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches. We have increased by 2 on this row. And that's going to be the pattern for the increases. You will increase 1 and then 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, but only on this side. Let's go on to the next row. Chain 2, yarn over, and this stitch, the chain up counts as this first stitch. Into the next stitch, increase 1 stitch and double crochet into the top of each stitch now from the previous row. And we have to go into the top of that chain. So on this row, we had 6 stitches in the previous row. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stitches. And the increase for your row where you have the single increase from this point forward is going to be not in that first stitch, but in the second stitch. And the reason for that in this pattern is if we kept increasing in this last stitch, it would actually begin to curve eventually. So alternating, increasing in the last stitch and the second stitch, last stitch, second stitch, keeps that from happening. Okay, so let's continue. Chain 2, which counts as a double crochet, yarn over, turn your work. On this side, that is the first stitch right here at the chain. So we go into the second stitch with a double crochet and double crochet in every stitch from the previous row, all the way to that chain. In this chain also, make sure that you always have 2 loops on the hook. You have 2 loops on the hook from that chain, always, so that those stitches don't pull open. Now this is our increase stitch, so we'll put 2 more double crochet in there. Okay, so if we had 7 stitches in the last row and we increase there by 1, we should have 9 stitches in this row. 2, 4, 6, 8, and 9. Another thing I want you to notice, the stitch that you increase 2 in is the one where you have all double crochets. The row where you chain up, like this next row we're going to do, there's no increase in that first stitch that's a chain. The increase is in the next stitch. And that is the pattern for the first 55 rows of this shawl. On row 55 is the last time we will increase, and then we will begin decreasing on the other side to form the entire shawl. And on the other side, we will end up with 3 stitches, just like this. I'm going to do 2 more increases with you, then I'm going to leave it with you for you to stitch independently until row 55. Chain 2, yarn over, and turn the work. This stitch is already done, it's the chain. In the next stitch, double crochet. And in every stitch from the previous row, double crochet. Okay, and you are coming into the chain. Notice also that where you increase 2, you're always into the chain. So you're going to increase 2 more stitches. So we should have 11 here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. Let me see. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Let's see. Did I increase too many? 2, 4, 6, 8. No, 10. I miscounted. And so I have 12 here. And so on the next row then, we're only going to increase by 1. We're going to chain up 2 times, 2. And we're not going to increase the first stitch, but in the next stitch, 2 double crochets. That's 1 double crochet and an increase. So we should have 13 stitches in this row. Make sure in your chains that you're always in 2 loops. And now let's look at our work and count our stitches here. We've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 13. Exactly what we want. And this is your stitch pattern for the first 55 rows. I also recommend that you use some stitch markers, and every
at 5 or every 10 rows, place a stitch marker in the end and keep them all on the same side. It doesn't matter if you keep your stitch markers on the straight side or the curved or the slope side, but keep them on the same side so that you can keep counting them. And it might also help to put them on the slope side so that it reminds you this is the side that I'm increasing on. And I will catch up with you on row 55. I've arrived at my 55th row. I've marked every 10 stitches with a stitch marker. So let's double check. I've got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and then 5 more rows. Okay, so now we're ready to make the other half of this garment. And just as we increased on this side of the garment, on one row we would increase by 1, and the next row we would increase by 2. We are going to decrease in that same pattern. And so I am going to keep my stitch marker in this 55th row. I am going to move it though because it's in my stitch that I'm going to need to put my hook into. So I think I'm going to get a little bit bigger stitch marker there. And the only thing that this stitch marker is for is to remind me where the center of the garment is. Because this is now the center, it's going to be the longest point of this project, the it of your future wardrobe. So it's the longest point, so now we're going to start decreasing. Now I ended up on a row where I had increased by 2 stitches, and I have 84 stitches in this row. To begin the decrease on the remaining side of the garment, the first decrease will depend on which increase you ended with on your last row. Ideally, you should end on the row where you've had 3 stitches in your last stitch. And the next time you will decrease by 1. You're going to have the same pattern in this next side of decreasing as you did in the increase side, where you increase 1 stitch in this row and then the next stitch you increase 2. So we're on an increase of 2. So on our first decrease is going to be a decrease of 1. To begin your decrease, you will chain 2, just exactly the way we've been doing, building our rows. And the next stitch, you're going to not pay any attention to your chain stitch. You're going to go into the next stitch and 3 loops on the hook as if you're going to do a double crochet, and pull through 2 loops. Now you have 2 loops on the hook. Begin a second double crochet in the next stitch, pull up a loop. You have 4 loops on the hook. Yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and yarn over, pull through all 3 loops on the hook. Now that looks very much like our double crochet 2 together, but this is actually a double crochet decrease. The difference in the 2 stitches is a double crochet 2 together is in 1 stitch. This particular stitch here was in 2 stitches, and we made it 1. And that's why it is a double crochet decrease. And then, and you can see that we have decreased 1 stitch in this row. We've just taken away 1 right here. And so in the remainder of this row, we will have 1 double crochet in the top of each stitch, all the way up. All right, I'm going to go ahead and finish this row and then come back down, and the next decrease is going to be on our way down. I'll check back with you at the end of this row. I have crocheted our first decreasing row all the way up, and then I'm coming back down to the decreases on this row, and on this row we will decrease 2 stitches. So we're going to use 4 stitches to decrease those 2 stitches. So I want to be sure and include my chain as stitch number 1, and then this is 2, 3, and 4. So our decrease is going to involve the last 4 stitches. So I need to put in 1 more double crochet, and the next stitch is going to be a double crochet decrease. Yarn over, insert the hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Yarn over, insert the hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and then yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. And that is a double crochet decrease, because we have in 2 stitches decreased with a double crochet and made it 1 stitch. See, we only have 1 stitch next time around to come into these 2. You're going to have a double crochet decrease in the next stitch also. Yarn over, insert the hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and then yarn over, insert the hook into the last stitch, which is our chain stitch from the previous row. Pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops on the hook. Now in this row you have decreased 2 stitches. You've turned 4 stitches into 2 stitches. So again, just like our pattern, on the increase row, where one row you increase 1 and the next row you increase 2, we do the same thing in our decreases. On this first row of decrease, we decreased by 1. And on the next row, you decrease by 2. Your decrease of 2 is always going to be on the way back down. The decrease of 1 is on the way up. All right, so let's start. Speaking of the decrease of 1 on the way up, let's chain 2 and do one of those. Yarn over and turn your work. And in the next 2 stitches, we're going to have a double crochet decrease. We don't count this first one. The chain up is this stitch. So yarn over and insert the hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Yarn over, insert the hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and pull through 3. And that is double crochet decrease. We just turn these 2 stitches into 1. Now double crochet in every stitch from the previous row all the way up to the beginning of this row. My double crochet decrease of 1 on this row, I'm now back down to the decrease side of my garment, and I am 4 stitches from the end on this row. This is the row that we decreased 2 stitches. So I'm going to yarn over, insert the hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Yarn over, insert the hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 3 loops. And that's our first double crochet decrease. Now yarn over, insert the hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, insert the hook into the next stitch, which is the chain up from the previous row, and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. And now we're ready for the chain up. And on this following row, since we decreased 2 here, how many do we decrease in this next row? That's right, 1. Because our pattern is 1 decrease on 1 row on the way up, and we're on our way up to the straight side of our shawl. And so on this row, we're going to decrease by 1. And so after the chain up, we're going to yarn over, and we're going to insert our hook into the next stitch. This first opening here for a stitch is the stitch for the chain. So we're going to go to the next stitch, insert the hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and then we're going to yarn over again into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, pull through all 3 loops. And now we're ready for a double crochet in each stitch from the previous row all the way up and back down. And whenever we come down, we'll decrease by 2 again. So that is your pattern repeat all the way to the end of this garment, which will be row 110. I will be counting my rows again just like I did before, but you're going to know when you're at that last row because you will have decreased all the way down to where you have 3 stitches. So you'll know when you get there. I have completed what, by any other definition would be a shawl, and this is that plus a scarf and a jacket. So what we've done with this so far is we have 110 total rows, 55 rows of increases from our beginning, and then we have 55 rows of decreases to go back up because this becomes a beautiful triangle shawl. Now mine's a little bit puckered up here, but we're going to put some stitches in there to and it will flatten out, and as you can see just by manipulating the stitches a little bit, because it's just freshly done, by manipulating those stitches a little bit it lays down flat. And so as we decreased, then we ended up with the same ending that we began with 3 stitches. And now we have a ruffle edging that goes around all of this triangular shape. The next part of this shawl, scarf, jacket, I don't know exactly what to call it. It's like it's its own entity, unique and special. It's the it. The next phase of our stitches is a double crochet border all the way around the 3 sides of the shawl. You will be going in the stitches, the last stitches in each row from the previous building of this triangle shawl. 2 double crochets under each of the posts from the edges of the previous stitches. Putting 2 double crochets because that's a good amount for my stitch height, and whatever yarn you're using and your stitch height, you may need 3. So the important thing to do is just be consistent, and you do not want this part of the edging or the border on this shawl, this triangle shawl, you don't want it to ruffle already. We're going to put 2 more rows on this and form a ruffle, but not yet. So all the way around all 3 sides of this triangle, 2 or 3 double crochet depending on your stitches. And I'll get back to you when I'm all the way around.
I've made my way around the entire shawl. The end corners of the shawl should have 5 stitches to go around, and then the V corner should have 3 stitches. Double crochet 5 stitches on the end corners and 3 double crochets in the V corner. All right, so now we're ready for our kind of ruffled edging. But I'm still going to keep it nice, kind of lacy, because this the fabric of the shawl and jacket itself is very dense. So I thought I would do a little contrast edging with a little more airiness to it. So after you slip stitch to join to the first stitch of that of the last row, then chain up 4. And that counts as a double crochet and a chain 1, and then double crochet into that same stitch and chain 1, skip a stitch and double crochet into the next stitch, chain 1 and double crochet
Into the same stitch.
So this is called a V stitch. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet into the same stitch is called a V stitch. And then we're going to chain 1 again. We're going to skip a stitch and double crochet, chain 1, double crochet back into the same stitch, chain 1, skip a stitch, and into the next stitch, double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. One more time, chain 1, skip a stitch into the next stitch, double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. And that is your pattern repeat for this row, and I will meet up with you when it's time to slip stitch to join. Now, beginning in our slip stitch to join, we're going to continue using the V stitches from the previous row. We're going to expand on those and make what we call a double V stitch. So you'll chain up 2 and put another double, that counts as a double crochet, and put another double crochet in that same chain space from the previous V stitch, and then chain 1 and then 2 double crochet. Now in this row, no chain between the 2 double V stitches. Just go right into the next V stitch and 2 double crochet, chain 1 and 2 double crochet. Let's show that pattern repeat one more time. Double crochet 2 in the chain stitch between the V stitch, and then chain 1 and 2 double crochet, and those are inside the V stitch from the previous row. So we are going to be increasing by 1 stitch in each V stitch to add just a little bit more of gentle ruching, but I don't want a real, a lot of ruffles. I want just a gentle ruching to come around as we wear this scarf, shawl, jacket in all its different ways. One more time, and then I'm going to leave it with you and I'll join up. I'll meet you up where we have the joint. It's 2 double crochet in the V chain, and chain 1 and 2 double crochet back in that same chain space. Whoops, getting discombobulated there. And that is your pattern repeat for this row, and I will meet up with you in a flash. I've made my way around my shawl with the double V-stitches inside the V-stitches from the previous round. Now I'm going to slip stitch to join in the first stitch, which is the chain up that counted as a double crochet. Chain 1 and insert the hook into that same stitch and single crochet. Into the chain space for that first double V stitch, insert the hook and form a single crochet. Chain 3 and insert the hook under the front 2 loops of that single crochet and slip stitch to form a 3-stitch picot. It's just a little loop that you slip stitch into the top of the first stitch. That's all it is. Insert your hook back into that same chain space and single crochet and chain 4. Insert the hook in the front of that single crochet at the beginning of the picot and slip stitch. And now you've formed a 4-stitch picot. Back into that same chain space in the double V stitch, single crochet, chain 3, and slip stitch back into the single crochet. Now begins the pattern repeat. Single crochet into the top of the next stitch. Single crochet in between the space between the 2 double V stitches, just between the space, not in the stitches, but between the space. And then single crochet in the top of the next stitch. Insert the hook into the chain space between the double V and single crochet. Chain 3, slip stitch back into the top of that single crochet, another single crochet in that same space, chain 4, slip stitch back into the single crochet, to form a picot, and then back into that same chain space, single crochet, chain 3, and slip stitch back into the single crochet. And now begins the pattern repeat again. Single crochet in the first stitch after the picot. Single crochet in the space between the 2 double V stitches and single crochet into, it's actually the second double crochet in the double V stitch, because this single crochet that's in the space is actually this first, is the stitch for this first double crochet. So you actually single crochet into the top of that second double crochet in the double V stitch. And now again back into the chain space between the double V stitch, make a single crochet, chain 3, slip stitch back into the 2 loops of the single crochet, single crochet again into that same chain space of from the previous row, chain 4, slip stitch into the front 2 loops of the single crochet, back into the chain space again with a single crochet, and chain 3, slip stitch again, and then repeat the pattern, repeat until the end of the round. But let's look at the stitches and see what we've done. Your picots, all they are is little loops, and it's in between that chain space of the double V-stitch, and it kind of forms a little flower, but it makes a nice little end treatment. This will be the last round of the shawl, and so repeat this pattern, repeat for the rest of the shawl, and I'll meet up with you right here. This is the final round of this project. Once you slip stitch to join, chain 1, pull up a loop, and clip your yarn. For the final phase of it is time to attach the buttons. I've chosen decorative buttons for my treatment. It calls for 6 buttons on the wrong side of the shawl. Now I am determining the right side of my shawl based on the lace edging that we put on, because it was done in a continuous round, and so that's going to be my front. So I've turned it over on the reverse side, and from the point on the back of the shawl, where the part that goes down the center of your back, measure up 2 inches for the first 2 buttons, 2 inches on each side, and then from there 3 inches, and then another 3. So the placement of the buttons will be like this. I am so sorry. By the time I knew that this was in fast forward, I had already sewed on all the buttons, but all I did was tie the buttons on with 2 strands of yarn to that final row of stitches all around the shawl, the same row that I attached the first row of double crochets to. And here we are with the final project. I really like the way this turned out. If you found value in this tutorial, I hope you'll like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. And until I see you again, keep calm and crochet on.